Yo, what's good? It's your boy Kevin Wright, aka Kev on Mission. Hanging out here because I wanted to come through for a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about this situation that we have on hand with George Floyd. I'm going to dive right up into this thing and we're going to start with what we have on the table so far. What we know is that over the weekend that he was killed at the hands of police. We know that the police were called because of a possible forgery. We don't know if we don't know if George was involved in forgery or not, so it would not be fair to say that he was responsible for forgery. However, we do know that's the reason the police was called. We do know that's why they put him on the ground face down and had him in handcuffs. So whatever transpired before the video that came out to the public recently, we know that at the time of the video that he was already on his face in handcuffs. And every person I know who currently works in law enforcement, related to somebody in law enforcement who has spoken to the issue, has said it is absolutely 100% unnecessary to put your knee on his neck in the fashion of what this officer did, which ultimately cost George's life. And no matter what details come out in the coming weeks, there is absolutely no reason that George should be dead. I personally do not believe any crime has been committed, and I believe that anything that does come out that will be slander. That is me, and that's where I stand with this situation. And what further anchors the fact, I will get to shortly, but I want to circle back to the point that he did not do anything to deserve to die, because any crime that's actually committed in cases, how is someone going to repay the crime? How is someone going to actually pay their debt to society when they're no longer a part of society by no longer existing? How's that going to happen? And I'll repeat again the fact that every person I know who's a part of law enforcement or closely tied to somebody said it was absolutely unnecessary for George to be treated the way he was treated, especially when you have people yelling and screaming to stop it. I have not personally watched the video, and even looking at the picture of the officer with his knee on his neck, you can see the look on his face, and you can see the pure just nonchalantness, just not caring about the fact that he's causing harm to somebody who's on the ground. That's another factor. But the biggest thing that really came out to me, one, besides the fact that his knee was on his neck, and you can see in the video that he was pleading for his life, saying, "I can't breathe, my stomach hurts, everything hurts, can you please let me go?" It was also stated by those who watched the video that you could even see George was crying out to his mom, who was deceased. So this man is in this much pain and in that much torment that he's crying out to his deceased mother because an officer has their knee on his neck. And it does not make any sense that he had to eventually die in the hospital at 9:25 p.m. later, because in 9 times out of 10 it was related to the situation that happened. So no matter how you look at it, it's agreed that he was killed. This is a form of murder. And to further speak to the thing, this morning more details came out about the person that George Floyd was. And those of you who know me well, you know I'm a campus minister, also somebody who has a tent making job at Walmart while being involved as a campus missionary with crew at George Mason University. And you also know me for somebody who has a huge heart for the body of Christ, to the point where doors have opened for me to be able to minister to students on different campuses and the like, such as Virginia Tech, Cornell University, and other spaces. You know I have a huge heart for the youth, and you have a huge heart for the young adult generation. And finding out more about who George Floyd was, in this instance, it is safe to say that we lost a brother. We lost somebody who was co-laboring on the field to see souls won to the kingdom. One individual, who his name escapes me at the moment because I didn't memorize it, who is out of Houston, where George lived before he was in Minneapolis, where he met his demise. They mentioned the fact that he was responsible for the gospel being shared in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and even in the event that this pastor from Houston was able to get into these areas because of the certain areas, because of the way that George was. They knew he was, like, even people who spoke of him talked about how he would carry baptismal pools to services. He would help set up stuff. He led Bible studies, and he was constantly trying to speak to young men to let them know not to go down the path towards destruction, but to turn towards the person of Jesus. So in every sense, we lost an evangelist. We lost a brother in the kingdom in this particular incident. And every incident that has been talked about, black men have been made in the image of God. They've always been more than hashtags. They've always been more than the worst thing they've ever done. And to see people treated in the image of God, period, should be enough. But to see that we lost a brother, an evangelist, we lost somebody who desires to see the kingdom come to Minnesota, where he was at, that's a more heart-wrenching thing, because that's a blow that comes to the church. That's a blow that comes to all of us as the body. Those of us who are out here doing this work, people like my work in campus ministry, you should be able to see this thing and speak to it. People who are a part of the church, period, you should be able to see this thing as we lost a brother. I'm a need for that to sink in. We lost a brother on the field to police brutality. You now can, some of you, it's funny because in this particular situation, and even in the situation with Ahmaud Arbery, which I've spoken to as well, I've had white brethren reach out to me and ask me, how are you doing? How are you holding up with things? And even one in particular mentioned, like, why is it we're always being proactive and not reactive? And so, just like I did in the situation with Ahmaud Arbery, I want to challenge again the white community by, look, we lost a brother. You lost a brother too. Like, you lost somebody who was about Jesus, and who was about doing the work, and he was about seeing these young men and women and people's lives transformed. He was about seeing people in the hood transformed. He was about seeing people know the person of Jesus. How is it we gonna sit up here and you get upset when we draw attention to these issues? But here's what also needs to be understood, and because now you should see, because this is also the case with Botham Jean, he was also very much a part of seeing Jesus being made famous. And George Floyd was about seeing Jesus made famous in the lives of those who he met. Everybody who knew him called him a man of peace. And to see someone who is a brother, someone who's an evangelist, somebody who is about seeing the kingdom, and every time these issues come up, our white brothers and sisters, some of you are the first ones to say, well, just preach the gospel. Just preach Jesus. George Floyd was doing just that. And George Floyd is no longer with us due to this monster known as police brutality. Known as a, and once again, we know that because of the history, these are attached to racist incidents. There's no way in the world you can separate the two. There's too long of a line of history. There's too long of a line of incidents. There's too much on the table. And I would encourage you to do your own homework to actually look at that before you get defensive and before you act fragile. Because what we're not going to do is play these fragile games. And you want to talk about folk being defensive and divisive, but you understand that we lost a brother who was preaching the gospel. We lost a brother who was seeing souls added to the kingdom. We lost a brother who was about seeing the kingdom work done. That's what happened. That's what we have on the table, and that's what's going down. And I want to quickly speak to a thing, because again, part of the gospel is speaking up to issues of injustice. A prime example, I'm going to quickly read one of the scriptures that come to mind, and there's actually a couple, but give me just 1 second. I'm going to pull it up real quick. And Proverbs 31 verses 8 and 9, open your mouth for the speechless. In the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. And I mean, in this case, I mean, look at it. Like, you have people screaming that, why is your knee on his neck? Like, why are you using such excessive force with him? Why are you treating this man this way? The way he was treated cost him his life. And I want to drive home the fact, because for people like myself who are working on the field of campus ministry, for others who work alongside of people, how is it you want to see revival, you want to see the kingdom move, and you want to see people come to Jesus, but the very people who are a part of this work are also being taken out by racism, police brutality? These are also people. It is also affecting those of us in the kingdom. There's a reason why we've been saying before video proof has been available that when these types of incidents go down, it's worth the attention of the church to take a look at. And now I'm saying it again, it's worth the attention of the church, because this time it took down a brother. It took down somebody who is a part. And I said this morning on one of my Facebook posts, and I believe it's going to be the case as I further do some more research on who George Floyd is. And from those who knew him best, and from those who are speaking, I said, I believe we have a voice that was and is very much needed, that was silenced way too soon. And again, because of those of us who serve in these types of fields, and those of us who serve to the capacities we serve, like, these are things that we are speaking to when we speak to the fact that Black Lives Matter. These are things that we are speaking to when we speak to, like, it's not okay to treat people any kind of way. Like Jesus even said in John 13:34 and 35, a new commandment I give to you, that you're to love one another as I have loved you, and you also love one another. And by this they will know that you're my disciples, because of your love for one another. That's part of the gospel, and raising our voices when we see these types of human atrocities take place is a part of seeing God's heart for justice take place. And how we're handled when we speak, there's a whole lot to Jesus even saying the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second one is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. Like, how do you love your neighbor as yourself when you attempt to silence them? How do you love your neighbor as yourself when you attempt to belittle? How do you love your neighbor as yourself when voices are raised in these areas and you attempt to silence by accusing divisiveness, and you say things? And a bigger thing to it is, we're not going to even pretend for a split second that the church in America has not defended crimes that the police should have been called to, but the police weren't, because the institution of the Western church valued its own protection versus those who had been unjustly hurt, those who had been victimized to sexual abuse and other things. We're not going to pretend for a second like that's not on the table when it comes to these types of issues, because you can't sit here and separate those types of things from these types of incidents that we've just been made aware of, and that have been happening for a long time, and that we're continuing to speak to. And so those are things, and I'm going to end this soon, but I want to say again what I've been repeating. We lost a brother. We lost somebody who's about the kingdom. We can't say we about revival. We can't say we about seeing God kingdom come, your will be done. We can't say we about that when we see laborers in the vineyard get taken down, and pretend like it's not nothing. We can't ignore it. George Floyd, we see you, and we're praying for the family and everybody, and believing God that justice will be served, and believing God that there will be others who you've impacted that will continue to further the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks y'all for listening, and see you soon. Peace.